Okay, welcome. Awesome. So we'll just give it a bit of a moment while people still join. But if you're on here, please let me know where you're from, which country you're currently living or residing. I would love to see more about where this community is from. But just take your time. But I guess I'll start off with a little introduction about myself. So I'm Anna. And I'm a clinical psychotherapist and hypnotherapist. Not only am I that, but I'm a big world traveler, so I've traveled a lot. So I've also have a very deep understanding around not just about women's safety, but the struggle with it, how it changes in different countries, the laws, the areas. It can be a very um, tough area, very touchy area as well. But being someone who is a psychotherapist, I've worked with a lot of domestic abuse, rape victims, and seen a lot of heavy things. So, our company and what we're doing here is we're wanting to provide more safety, we're wanting to provide more information, more value to help people, but also create a community where more women can feel safe, where they can have a place to be open. And we're also wanting to launch different services, so well, free services to help women feel more safe in their families as well. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think from that we can wait a little bit longer, but I could get started as well. But also, just let me know again if anyone's here, if anyone wants to mention anything. This is an open, safe space, so feel free to share anything at any time as well. Alrighty. Well, I guess we'll get straight into it then. And if you have any questions about me as well, feel free. Anything. Open area. So we're going to be going through a few different things today. We're wanting to be going over different laws, the gray zones, the positives, but we're also wanting to talk about different scenarios, different struggles, and different areas that people struggle with, and how you can get more support and how to deal with it, especially when it comes to being in very hard situations where our nervous system gets triggered, where we go into that freeze, fight, or flight mode. But we're going to go straight into it and we're going to start to talk about the laws around the women's safety. Starting with comparing between the two biggest areas. So we'll go Europe and then we're going to go the US. So, what's working? Let's start off with that. The pros. So, affirmative consent laws are very good, meaning yes means yes laws. This is only currently in two countries, like Sweden and Spain, but this has recently come out and it is very good. And the EU is starting to adopt it as well as Istanbul. They have the Istanbul Convention, which is a human right treaty which is focused on preventing violence against women. Now, this is really amazing that Istanbul has actually started that, and now many EU countries are starting to adopt it. So these are the positives. We want to start on a positive note. And then we have street harassment laws, which I think is very common. I do not know one woman who hasn't had someone catcall them or had public harassment. The reality of that is just horrible. But there is one country, which is France, and it has criminalized catcalling and public harassment. So fines can be issued on the spot. So speaking about more of these laws is really good because then we can actually promote it and educate it in other countries. And another positive note is workplace protection. It's small, but it's starting, and that's the EU requires companies to prevent and address harassment at work. It is now legally in place. Okay, now the US. Now, let me know if you're from the US here and if you have anything to add about these laws, whether it's good or bad. But we have the Title IX, which protects students from sexual harassment or assault in schools and universities. It's good, but this should be a normal right. We need this. We also have the Violence Act Against Woman Act, which is VAWA, and it funds domestic violence shelters, legal support, and education. This is something that's rising, and it's something we also want to start to adopt in all countries, not just the US. And then one really good thing as well is the growing push for consistent education. So some states, not all, are beginning to require schools to teach what healthy boundaries and consent look like. They're starting this all the way from primary school. So that's a positive. Now we have the what's not good. And these are the gray zones. Well, no, these are deeper than the gray zones. But starting with Europe, in the EU, there is an outdate rape laws. So some countries still require proof of physical force for an act to be classified as rape. And as many women know, unfortunately, I know many women who've been raped, this is not always the case. We shouldn't have to need physical proof. There's also inconsistent enforcement, so there is no trauma informed police, and that is often lacking. So, when women do provide to the police of a situation that happens, oftentimes it's just swept under the rug. And then underreporting. Most assaults go unreported due to fear, shame, lack of trust in the system. Now, I think this is something that we can all agree on that happens worldwide. Okay, so let's compare this to the cons of US. So, patchy state laws. Some states don't recognize marital rape or physical resistance. This is very, very bad. I think I know a number of people, I have a number of friends who have unfortunately been sexually abused or harassed on dates because many, many laws, not just the US, I'm from Australia myself. In Australia, if you go on a date with someone, that is considered consent. Not a good law, not something good in place. And then, including with the US, we have the backlog rape kits. So it is thousands of untested kits, delayed justice, and it actually re traumatizes survivors. What this means is that if you want to have proof that something horrible has happened, they do a DNA swab test, but those actually don't go to the science faculties and it just stays in the I don't know what to call it, but like the police locker and never actually goes through. So re traumatizing the survivors. And then very, very simple, but very important, the inequality access to resources. In the US, but obviously in many countries as well, rural or low-income communities have limited victim support. Unfortunately, the most victim support goes to people who are in the medium to high income ratio. But one thing that I'm very, very passionate about that needs to be talked about more is these gray zones. And if you have any gray zones or anything to add, please let me know. But withdrawal consent midway, big gray zone. So many legal systems don't actually clearly define whether you can revoke consent during a sexual act. If someone has consent at the start, legally it can go all the way through, which is a very, very bad problem. There's also gray zones within guilt based pressure. So giving consent under pressure, guilt, and manipulation is not legally recognized. If you give consent, but it was under guilt, under manipulation, it's still legally okay. And then we have a relation based assault, which is when you're in a long term relationship. It is often minimized or just diminished. And these relationships can be within families, can be a partner, and can be a friend as well. And then we have a growing problem, which isn't talked about enough, and it's tech abuse. So, cyber talking, location tracking, stuff like air tags. And then there is sharing nudes or what is it? Revenge porn, I think is it called. And these are not legalized or have any laws around it in most countries these days. And then there is the last one, which is very important, which many women struggle with. I work through with women a lot of the time, which is the freeze response. We have the fight, we have the flight, or we have moments where we freeze, where we're blank, we're numb, and we shut down. And so these people who go into these freeze moments, they don't really fight back. It looks like they're not really taking anything seriously, but according to the law, it's not real resistance, so it doesn't count. So that's kind of a little dive into what we're having with the laws. There are some good laws, but there's a lot of cons and there's a lot of gray zones. Does anyone have any specific questions or want to add anything around that? Okay, no worries and no worries. I can just keep going. So we can go into the next one, which is talking about cultural and societal safety. So we have cultural norms, but then we also have societal norms, many different ones. And if anyone has anything they want to talk about in the area, please write it in the chat. So let's go into what is normalized societally, but something that shouldn't be. So very normal. We all do it. We've all done it. It's texting, I'm home safe after a night out. It's a cultural norm, but should it be? Another one that all us women know is carrying keys in between our fingers or changing routines or making sure we're covering up clothes to avoid attention. This is normal. We do this nearly every day, but should it be? Smiling at uncomfortable advances to avoid conflict. This is normal as well. Playing it off, trying to be nice, being the good girl so we can walk away. And then what's also normal is the part that we're talking about that was good that France did, which is criminalizing catcalling, but it's very normal. Catcalling, jokes, being stalked, and it seemed harmless or being presented as something that's flattering and we should take it as a compliment. And then there's victim blaming. Why were you alone? What were you wearing? Why didn't you say no louder? We can go into those fear responses. Our nervous system shuts down. And then oftentimes when we do get put in these positions, we do get that victim blame. Well, you shouldn't have been wearing that, or you should have said no. And sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do. Okay, so what should be normal? Again, if you have anything, please write it in the chat. Is having open conversations about boundaries and consent. This is something that I've worked with a lot of women is trying to create more boundaries with the men in their life, in their workplaces, but it is something that is very, very, very difficult for them to bring up, but should be normal. And if you have any questions on how to bring up those conversations, please ask me. I'm an expert in this. Okay, a really big one is teaching kids emotional safety and personal autonomy from a young age. Very, very important. And then with that, men actively participating in preventing and addressing harassment. A lot of us women need to step in, but men stepping in is a big one. And that comes around to education and also keeping your male friends accountable as well. Okay, what should be normal again is communities creating safety and supporting victims instead of staying silent. I think the biggest problem in women abuse or just having safety as well is that not everyone has a community. Often in this world, we can feel very, very alone. So, creating more communities like this, what we're trying to do, create more of a community so women can feel more safe and get the support they need. And then, as I said before, holding people accountable. Your male friends, we need to hold them accountable. But working up to that can feel very, 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 very difficult. So, is there any questions that anyone has around that area, around cultural norms? What should be normal? What shouldn't be normal? Let me know in the chat. I'll give it just a little moment. Okay, okay, no worries. Well, we'll keep going through different areas. So, this is a very important topic and it's navigating risky situations. I think we can have a lot of fear when it comes to different situations. We get comfortable in staying small. But we need to look at the risky situations and also without victim blaming. So let's go through some common scenarios: walking home at night, being followed or approached aggressively, harassment on public transport, feeling unsafe at a bar, club, or house party, using dating apps, or meeting someone for the first time. Unfortunately, these are all normal situations, but they are risky situations as well. So it's very, very important to go into these situations with having some empowering tools and tips. So, like using code words. So, share a secret phrase with friends to signal discomfort. Also, every single country has a secret word. So, if you go up to a bar or cafe, well, at least most countries that I've been to have a secret word at bars or cafes. So, if you're having problems or anything, you can go straight there, let them know the word, and they'll look after you. Okay. And then we also have live location sharing. Now, this is something that's coming more and more, which is live location sharing apps. So you can use simple ones like WhatsApp, like we have, or Telegram, that allows you to share your live route. But this is something that we are wanting to launch a service in later, is being able to support women in this so they can always feel safe. And then a big one is trusting your gut. If something feels off, even if you can't explain it, you're allowed to leave. One of the biggest problems in just society in general is we don't trust our gut. With women, but this is with men as well. From a very young age, if we go, "Hey, mum or dad, this makes me uncomfortable. This auntie, this uncle makes me uncomfortable," it's very, very often that we get told, "Just be nice. Oh, that's nothing. Don't worry. Just be nice." But the repetition of that subconsciously allows us to bring in this belief to not trust our gut. And so oftentimes when we're in situations, we can feel our gut lighting up, we can feel our intuition saying something, and we don't trust it. Because unfortunately, in our society, we're taught to trust the higher power, can be workplace, parents, whatever it is, more than trusting our gut. So if something feels off, even if you can't explain it, you're allowed to leave. I have been in many situations in my life where everything seems like a red flag. My gut says it's okay and it's fine. Whereas I've been in situations where everything's a green flag. Everything looks good, but my gut is like, "Mm-mm, no way." And I leave. Make sure you trust that. Okay. More empowering tools is pre-planned exit strategies. So having lines like, "Oh, I have to take this call. I need to find my friend." Having things ready just in case if you're using dating apps and going on first time dates or anything like that. And then community support and help. This is something that's very hard, but don't be afraid to ask someone nearby to step in. "Can you pretend to know me?" Something like that always works. Okay. So, is there any questions around that, or anyone that wants to share navigating a risky situation that could help others or something that they've struggled with? Okay, no worries. I think I'll put a question here because one question I often get from especially new clients is, "I want to travel solo, but I constantly feel anxious. What might happen? What if I freeze or don't react in time?" So, if this is something that you've been struggling with or dealing with, the fear is real. First of all, it's okay to feel nervous. That's not a weakness, that's awareness. And freezing is a normal trauma response. It's your nervous system trying to protect you, not fail you. Solo travel can be very, very, very empowering. You can learn so much, you can get stronger, and many things. Um, but you do need to be aware. Your safety comes first. Preparation helps, sharing your location, having emergency contacts ready, and trusting your instincts. But also, even just reminding yourself that you're allowed to take up space in the world. Fear doesn't mean you're not brave, it just means you're human. And bravery often looks like just taking the smallest steps forward, even if fear is present. Okay, quick drink. I'm gonna take a quick look at the chat because I can't seem to get much. Can someone message in the chat just to see if I know that I'm getting anything? Maybe I can. Hello. Hmm. Okay, no worries. I'll just continue. I can at least message in the chat. Okay. What does someone say? Can you see? I can see. Thank you. Thank you for putting that there. Perfect. Hmm. What's this question? How should you behave if you experience harassment in a foreign country? What a really, really, really good question. So, one of the biggest things that I recommend, and this is coming from someone who has been in over like 30 different foreign countries and I have received harassment. The first thing I try to do when I get to a foreign country is actually befriend a local. And you can do this through many, many different apps. Because once you have a local, then it's so much easier. You can look up resources, ask ChatGPT or whatever. But the best way to navigate any foreign country is to make sure that you befriend a local or that you find someone or some community where you can get support with. You can always research and get that. So I'd recommend doing that and going to that person. But if you experience harassment in a foreign country, the first thing is to alert authorities. It really does depend on the country. Obviously, if we have Muslim countries, those things are acceptable. But there are many grey areas in countries like Europe, the Americas, US or South America, Australia, Asia, but also going to your embassy. So every country has an embassy for your country, and you can find support there. Even if you get robbed, anything happens, always have your embassy on call. They'll have a number that you can call. If you have WhatsApp, there's a message and you can call them straight away. Do you have any more questions about that? Okay, but I welcome anyone else's insights as well. Okay, awesome. So let's kind of keep going. And this is a very important one, which is where my expertise comes in, and it's understanding trauma responses. The thing is, we get into these situations, or we can think about these situations, if this were to happen to me, I'd do this, 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 and this. I'd know what to do. But what about when we go into a mode of fight, flight, or freeze? And they're all very valid trauma responses. And these are things that we need to know how to navigate. Because many people, when they get little threats or they get pushed into a certain direction or blamed or anything, they go into a freeze response, which is a very threatening experience for them. Oftentimes, we can have self blame that often stems from not understanding these automatic reactions. But we need to normalize these responses and reduce the shame around them so we can support the healing. Has anyone been in a tough situation where they have found themselves go into a freeze, fawn, fight or flight response? Let me know. Okay, so I'm going to go through each response and how to deal with it. So, first we have the fight response. This is very, very normal, and it's usually a response that we have when we often were made the persecutor in family situations and primary school situations as well. If we were often the person who was made the persecutor, we often have a need to fight. Now, when we go into these situations, when we fight, we receive, I don't want to say more blame, but we receive more negativity. It's important to take a deep breath and calm your nervous system down. There's a thing we say in therapy all the time, and it's that we can control nothing in life but two things: our reactions and our breath. Because we can't control our thoughts, we can't control the way other people react, but we can control the way we react and our breath. So if you're finding yourself in a moment needing to fight, now fighting can be good depending on the situation, but fighting can also put more fuel onto the fire. Come back to your breath. Okay, same for the moment of flight. Now, flight is probably one of our best reasonings, but it's important for us to again look at the situation and deep breathe. Come back to our breath that calms our nervous system. Same with freeze. When we go into the moment of freeze, it is literally the way that our body reacts when there is no other way but to shut down. Your body shuts down to protect you, especially when escape feels not impossible. If you go through a stage like that, just remember what's happening is valid. Whether you scream, whether you don't, pain isn't measured by reaction, and your story doesn't need to be dramatic to be taken seriously or either. Come back to yourself, breathe, and don't blame yourself. When we go into moments of fight, flight, or freeze, again, our nervous system reaction, oftentimes we'll go into it more because we beat ourselves up. But education around this for ourselves is very, very important, but also for others. So when we go into those moments, we can have people to support us. Okay. All right. Again, I welcome any more questions if you have any. Okay. So we're going to go into a deeper area, which is not talked about enough, but it is microaggressions and power dynamics. And when I mean microaggressions, I mean, being interrupted, dismissed in conversations very, very rudely, gaslighting or emotional manipulation in relationships or workplace, or subtle boundary testing behaviors that escalates over time. These are all very, very, very common things that women experience in their day-to-day life, but it's very hard to talk about it because, again, they're microaggressions. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they build, and they're also power dynamics. When someone has power over you, it can be in a workplace, can be in a friendship group, can even be in a relationship. And this matters because behaviors erode confidence over time and erode safety. Many times, if we grow up in an unstable environment, these subtle gaslighting, emotional manipulations, it's seemed as normal for us. But over time, it erodes our confidence, it erodes our ideas of safety. So if this is something that you're struggling with, because I know many clients and I know many people who do struggle with it, please let us know. You can let us know the situation that's happening and we can talk about how to deal with it best. Okay, I'll give that a moment. Alrighty, so I'll speak about one common subject that's often brought up when we're talking about power dynamics or microaggressions. And it's when someone's crossing the line, especially when it's a coworker who keeps making comments, whether it's sexual, little jokes, or anything like that. Mm, okay, okay. Well, I'll answer this question first. So, how can I overcome a trauma that I have received? This is a very, very valid question, and I'm so sorry that something has happened that has traumatized you. But a trauma happens when we get put in a distress situation. But it's not the situation itself that causes the trauma, it's the ability to not have support or the right emotional processing skills after. We're not able to process that experience, so instead we part of our mind gets trapped in that experience and we relive it again and again and again because our mind, our subconscious is actually trying to let it go. It wants to let go of these feelings, but we were never taught the safety mechanisms how in that moment. And instead, we have triggers that re-trigger it again and again and again. For example, I had a client who always had a trigger. She would hear a loud noise, especially a car, and it would put her in a very, very dark place. But what that memory was back when she was a child, her father had a motorbike. And whenever she heard the motorbike, she knew he was going to come home and potentially beat her. Our mind gets trapped in these experiences and relives them again and again and again. How we overcome trauma, it really depends on the trauma, what you're going through, what the experience is. But when you are reliving that trauma, feeling those experiences, it's important to come back to yourself and say, I'm safe. Have grounding techniques, have support, and remind yourself that you are safe and you're okay. And most of all, do not gaslight yourself. It can be very, very difficult because oftentimes you go, oh, stop being stupid, let it go. A lot of these things that sets us back more. We need to provide the safety that we never had and become that parent. Does that make sense? I hope it does. But I hope that you're able to receive the right support that you can need. And if you ever need support or anything, feel free to reach out here or to a local therapist or anything like that. Okay. Well, I'll go on with the other question, which was how to deal with people at work with microaggressions. Because, oh, you got more? That's a good question as well. Okay, what's the difference between coaching and therapy? Okay, so coaching is someone who has expertise in a specific area, has expertise and experience, kind of like a mentor. They're someone who has lived through that experience and who wants to help teach people. For instance, if you have someone who's like a business coach, they've gone through business before, so they'll coach you, they'll teach you. Just like you have a basketball coach, they have they have played basketball before, done well at it, so they can coach it. And so that is what is a coach, but people can consider themselves a coach, can identify themselves as a coach. There's no regulations around that. So if you're wanting to hire a coach in some specific area, I definitely just do some research on the person. Whereas therapy is it's standard mental health support, but most therapists have to follow specific guidelines. There's more legalization around it, more support, and more training in that as well. If you're looking for a coach, yeah, just be very, very specific because there are some amazing coaches out there, but then there are some that I would say are there for making money. So be very, very particular when choosing, but also get friends as well to find the right one because you can also have some amazing trauma coaches that can help. Okay, so I'll go straight back into it. Oh, whoops. Oh, thank you, Mary. It's a very good question. If someone pressures me into something intimate while I'm drunk, does that count as crossing a line or being inappropriate? Whether you're drunk or not, that's crossing the line and being inappropriate. No one should ever have to pressure you into anything. But the problem is that the more intoxicated we are under any sort of substance, the more likely we are to say yes. And that's something I'm going to go into soon is the power of the no and how to say that. But yes, if someone's pressuring you while you're drunk, that is crossing the line and being inappropriate. Someone shouldn't have to pressure someone into anything. Someone is able to invite you or welcome you, but the instant that it becomes pressure, it's crossing the line. And this is where we need to set boundaries. So I can move into boundaries. I have got a little thing of notes. So I think that would be good to bring up now is talking about boundaries. Oh yes, it's next. Perfect. Okay. So let's speak about boundaries and assertiveness because this is something we need to learn. We need to learn and practice phrases like, hey, that makes me uncomfortable. Please don't talk to me like that. Even just simply saying no, thank you without needing to explain yourself or justify it, or I'm not okay with this. These are important things that we need to say, and I actually recommend even practicing it regularly, if it's with yourself in the mirror or even with a friend. Because when we go into these very difficult moments and we feel pressure, it's very easy to say yes or no because there's a fear of judgment, there's a fear of rejection. And the thing is, judgment and rejection are very, very hard emotions to push past because back when we used to live in tribes, which is not too long ago compared to human evolution, when someone was rejected from a tribe, that literally meant death. And so it's often the reason why, when we go through moments of rejection or something that could create rejection, we fear it. So we say yes instead of no. And then bad situations happen. Okay. But key messages here is you do not need a reason to say no. Setting boundaries is right. It's not confrontation. And practice builds confidence. Just being assertive builds boundaries over time. Even if it's something small with friendships, if you feel pressured in any sort of situation, even if it's another female friend, just practicing saying, no, I don't want to do that. Even if someone's pressuring you to go out and you don't want to, you can say, "Hey, no, I just wanna have a night in." Practice saying no. Is there any questions around that? Anything in general or just, around boundaries? Write it down. Okay, so I'll bring up a very, very common example that I hear, that I've seen, that I've been through myself, which is, struggling to say no, even when I really want to. And the biggest thing is, how do I stop feeling guilty about it? Because you were likely taught indirectly or directly or indirectly that saying no in a family environment was selfish, rude, or difficult. Many of us get taught that very, 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 very long ago. But that's not the truth. That's what we call conditioning. Saying no is not an attack on someone else, it's an act of self respect. But we need to start small and practice saying no in low stakes situations that build up muscle. And guilt, this is something that will show up, but it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It just means that you're unlearning it. Most of us, especially women, are conditioned to say yes. As we're saying before, we're conditioned to not trust our gut. So, how do we build up ourselves to be able to say no, to be able to trust our gut, is in very, very small situations. Even just practicing in the mirror, it seems really, really stupid, but super simple and it works. Because when we're looking at building up our own inner boundaries or setting boundaries with other people, we need to start small. Think of it like a plate of food. If you have a plate of food, do you try to eat it all at once? No, you take small bites. And it's the same thing with building these boundaries. Small steps, small bites. Okay, so another one I think is very, very important for women to know, for everyone to know, is how do I set boundaries without seeming rude or aggressive? So, boundaries are how you say it, or whether you say it or not, they're boundaries. You can be firm, but you can also be kind at the same time. So, for example, yep, thanks for letting me thanks for letting me know, thanks for checking in, but I'm not available right now. I'm not available to talk right now. That's a very simple one that we can do with a friend. Just saying, "Hey, sorry, I don't have room right now." Or saying something like, "Yep, okay, thanks for giving your opinion, but I see differently." Saying we don't have to agree with someone or say yes to something, but saying I see it differently. These are just small little ways to build up our inner boundaries so we can set external boundaries without having the guilt. Okay, let's see this question. So, very good question. So, often women say yes when they actually mean no. How can we express disagreement or discomfort without it being perceived as rejection? So, very, very, very good question. Let me just reread that. Mhm. So, the biggest thing is, if we're looking at it as a male perspective, one things we need to teach males is seeing the body language. It will always tell. When we're saying yes, when we mean no, there is, you mean no for yes? Okay. Can you retype it so I understand it? Ah, okay. So I think I understand. So for instance, when we go on a date or anything, we go out with someone, they go, "Are you okay?" And they go, "No, no, I'm fine." Like that. I'm gonna make that assumption, but if it's different, just let me know. It's a very big problem where we're used to gaslighting our own emotions, or when we don't understand our own emotions, we automatically shut down to a no. If we don't know what the problem is, or if we know what the problem is and we don't know how to express it, we tend to shut down. So, one thing that we need to do is begin to retrain this, because one of the biggest problems is many, many times with men, we go to a club as a woman and they go, "Hey, you want to drink? You want to dance?" And we say no. But because many times in relationships, whether it's with a male and his mother or with Partners, women don't know how to express what they're feeling. They don't know how to express their anxiety, their problems. So when a man goes, "Hey, what's wrong?" They go, "No, no, no, no," and eventually they say yes when it's insisted enough. And it's the same thing that happens with rape. Very harsh, very bad. We should be afraid of rejection. If something doesn't make us feel good, we should express it. We should always express it. A big societal problem is that honesty is something we don't influence. We actually influence hiding, we influence putting on a mask and putting on a smile. And for that, we have so many bad dynamics in society. Practicing boundaries, practicing honesty is super, super important. And again, saying no. So even and if you need to say yes, then say yes. It's a practice that we need to continue. Okay, I'm going to read that again so to see if I have anything else. Should we be afraid of rejection? We shouldn't be afraid of rejection, yeah. And it comes exactly back to that before is unfortunately rejection back in the past, rejection literally meant death because when we were rejected from a tribe or from a society, we literally died. So why rejection, shame, having conflict, we avoid it at all costs. We avoid it so much that we detriment ourselves. But we need to unlearn these beliefs because this is something that is generational that we've had for a long time, but it's also awareness around mental health. Before we were talking about kids and having schools and having more education in schools, and this is a very big thing as well. Okay, I feel like I've gone into so many different areas, but I think I will continue with before, which is the boundaries and how to set them. But please, I welcome any more questions if anyone has any. But has anyone ever found themselves wanting to set a boundary or wanting to stand up for themselves, but they feared being rude, aggressive, or they got projected that that was them? Let me know if you have. If not, I feel like we all have. But it's really, really, really important to stand up for yourself and still speak. Like before, you can still be assertive and kind and practicing saying things like, that makes me uncomfortable. Please do not talk to me like that. No, thank you. No need to justify yourself, no need to over explain, or simply just saying, I'm not okay with this. Okay. So let's continue diving into some different areas. So there is the bystander intervention. Does anyone know what that is? I'm still going to explain it. I'll ask anyway. But it is the bystander intervention is all about what we call the 5 Ds. And this is how we're able to support other people when we're in public. Because one of the biggest problems, and this is something that I used to experience, so I used to suffer with PTSD. And when I would have a trigger, it was usually at home. Sometimes it happened in public, and very, very hard experience, but would pretty much be shaking on the ground. I barely got any bystanders helping me. It's something I have to help myself through. But it's something that we're trying to help now is talk about bystander intervention. Encourage people to say no, encourage people to stop in because currently in our society, there was a statistic done on actually helping people in public, and the answer for the bystander was, well, I thought someone else would help them. Taking the courage to step up to help other people, to help other women, and to help situations that we see need. So we're going to follow this by the 5 Ds, which is distract, delegate, document, delay, direct. These are the 5 Ds as a bystander to help protect other women and other people who are in distressful situations. So the first one is distract, interrupt the situation with a diversion. Okay, I'll answer that question in a moment. I'll finish this. We have delegate, which is get someone else involved, like a manager or a authority figure. Document, record the incident if it is safe to do, and delay, check in with the victim after to offer support. And then direct, if it feels safe, address the behavior directly. These are 5 different ways that you can help a support. This is 5 different ways you can help support someone who is in a tough situation. But I want to go into your question, Mary. So, how can I set boundaries in a way that doesn't escalate the situation or make it worse? So, first one, we need to assess the situation and what's happening and why we need to set boundaries. And then we need to approach it in a way that is stern, but also kind. So, if we're setting boundaries in a workplace, we need to say it in a way that's kind of, yeah, we need to acknowledge the behavior. So, for instance, one of the most normal things that people do is when you're setting boundaries with people at work is a good when you're setting boundaries at people at work is a good example. You can have a man making, sexual comments, really rude comments, or just being playful. The first thing is to acknowledge the behavior and not go in an attackful way. Because when we approach with, like, let's say an attack, like you did this, you said this, we're going to get an attack back. We want to approach the situation. So let's say there's a male who has made a comment, a sexual comment about you, and he's joking. You can say, "Hey, I understand you're being humorous," or "Hey, I can understand that's a joke, but when you say things like that, it makes me feel uncomfortable." Stern but kind, acknowledging their action and not saying, you know, like get away or anything like that, because they can't go into a victim stage, and then saying, "Don't do that." When we're wanting to approach any situation and set boundaries, we want to first approach with something that's kind and then stern, and always think of it in that order. I hope that makes sense. If there's a situation you want to speak about or bring up, I'm more than happy to help with some information on what to do with it. Okay, awesome. And then thank you. Thank you, everyone, for these questions. And I just really welcome more questions. Remember that this is a safe space where you can be open, you can speak openly, and I'm happy to hold you here in whatever way. Okay, beautiful. All right. So let's kind of continue going through talking about the bystander intervention because this is a big one. Oh, I'm glad you like that one. Thank you. But yes, if you have any other questions about boundary setting or having conversations with people, let me know because oftentimes this is very, very important. I've already spoken about it, but we do have that freeze response. Dealing with that freeze response can be very, very hard, but it's important to push through and just breathe. If you're going to have a breakdown, if you're going to cry, welcome the tears, don't hold it back, or anything like that. These three responses, well, four responses now, which is fawn, freeze, flight, or fight, they're normal. And it's just our nervous system saying that I don't feel safe right now. I encourage women actually speaking up and saying, "This makes me uncomfortable. I don't like this." And even if they do go into one of those responses, which is freeze, fight, or flight, you're letting them know the behavior isn't okay and you're letting other people know the situation. Don't be afraid to shut down when it comes to setting your boundaries. Practice. And again, even practice saying in the mirror, practice with a friend, or even set boundaries in small ways with your family. Oftentimes, we accept certain comments, we accept certain harassments because it is in our family or it's something that we grow up with. Just say, "Hey, I understand you're trying to make a joke. Yeah, I really see that." Again, we're being kind. We're not giving them a reason to attack us and say, "But this makes me uncomfortable. But that makes me feel bad about myself. But that makes me feel not enough." Always go kind, then stern, kind, then strength. Because when we go into that pattern, we're able to shut down anything that's happening. We want to make sure that when someone harasses us or when someone approaches us with a very negative comment, something very bad, try not to be negative back because that gives them a reason to be the victim. Unfortunately, we are the victims in the thing, but if we be the victim, then they're only going to attack us more. If we approach the situation with kindness, aha, I totally understand you. But no, that confuses their mind subconsciously because they can't react like a victim and they can't react like an attacker. So they have to shut it down naturally. Okay. All right. So, the question that I wish I was asked or wish that was more known about or talked about is how do I know when it's safe to step in when it comes to delegating a situation or call for help? I've been someone who has been in public and I've seen a woman getting harassed and I didn't do anything about it. And I remember beating myself up a lot about that. And that's the thing is like, how do we know what to do? And again, this is when comes in, which is the 5 Ds. I can go over those in a second, but I would love to answer this response here. I'm afraid my daughter might experience trauma when I go out at night. What can I practically do to keep her safe without limiting her freedom? How old is your daughter, first of all? Because the answer for this question will change. You don't have to tell me the exact age. If you're worried, you could just say in between, like, 13 to 17, whatever it is. Okay, take your time. But I'll try to answer it in a broad way. 18. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question again and answer it. So I'm afraid my daughter might experience trauma when I go out at night. What can I practically do to keep her safe without limiting her freedom? Okay, so when your daughter is going out at night, she is experiencing trauma, or when you go out at night? Okay. All right, I'll answer it in a broad way, in the way that I understand it most. So if you're okay, so you're afraid that when your daughter goes out, something might happen to her, and that brings you a lot of distress. And that's what I'm understanding from the situation. How can you keep yourself without limiting her freedom? Oh, such a big question because oftentimes with she's I'll say teenager, but with teenagers we can't limit their freedom because the more that we push and we set child boundaries on someone becoming an adult, the more they push back. That's very, very difficult. So keeping her safe is keeping open communication and trying not to scold her, trying to avoid getting mad at her, like, "Oh, where are you going? Okay, nice. Make sure you text me. You know, you're safe here." Always trying to provide positive affirmations on how you feel about her and how you feel about what she's doing. Even if you get uncomfortable by what she's doing, if you put more rules or if you put more expectations on her, the more she's likely going to push back. So trying to actively create open communication, even if something that makes you very, very, very distressed about what she's doing and what she might be doing, just be like, okay, I see you want to experiment or I see you want to try different things. Completely understand that. Yeah, I want you to experience the world. Not to say that you want to encourage any kind of behavior, but you want to encourage that she can be open to you. The biggest problems when it comes with communication with young adults, teenagers to their parents is when the parent still tries to be a parent like they are when they're younger. And it creates this big rift where the young adult doesn't talk to them, doesn't feel open with them. So you want to make sure that you're supportive, even if you're not fully supportive, that you're open to what they are looking into by staying open. And that way you can also have maybe more apps so you can track her, have a lot of different connection as well. So it would depend on the situation. Are there any services that can help that? Yeah. So the most simple service that can help with that is literally just like WhatsApp. You can have a shared location for 12 hours. But with us here, we're actually launching a few services soon where we're going to be launching where we're going to be able to help with tracking, help with communication. If anything happens to a woman, they can have a little dial which will alert authorities or they can talk to someone for support as well. It's something that we're looking into the future because honestly, the thing that we need these days is speed. But with your daughter's concern, just trying to create more open communication with her. It really does depend. We could dive in further into it, but I need more details about like what the trauma is, what's happening when she's going out. If is it you that is feeling the trauma of her going out, or does she have a trauma and it's something that you worry that will be re-triggered? These are all situations that can be delegated, but the more specific, the more I can help with that as well. But again, any other questions, please welcome them. We've only probably got about 5 minutes left on this, but I am happy to go over time as well if anyone needs more questions, has more support in different areas. But write them down, write them in the chat. I'll answer them. But while I'm speaking about this, I want to go into talking about healing and reclaiming your power. Because we talked about saying no is very, very hard. It's easier to say yes and go with any situations. Even before trusting our gut is a very hard thing. It's very, very difficult. So we need to start to learn to trust our body, to trust our gut. If a situation shows green flags everywhere, but our body says no, trust that. And that happens in small practices as well. But one thing I recommend is doing anything where you can connect to your body because it sounds weird, sounds kind of woo woo, hippie, but your body literally holds every experience that you have. That's why we say trust your gut. So, doing anything that can help you connect yourself to your body more, like breath work, visualization, movement, yoga, is really, really good. A study was done actually back in the 1980s where they did a study on trauma survivors and let's say like normal basic people. They had a coin and they put it in each person's hand. The standard, the Burbian person was like, okay, yeah, I can feel. They had their eyes closed. I can feel it's a coin. It's round. Yeah, it's a coin. The trauma survivors couldn't even tell what shape it is or the weight. That's how much trauma or distressing experiences disconnect us from our body. And so, how can we overcome those nervous system responses, the fight, the flight, the freeze? How can we feel safe in our body is by reconnecting ourselves back into our body. Deep breathing. When we go into stressful moments, what happens? Our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, we start to get brain fog. It's because we're not breathing properly, coming back and doing deep breathing. Any situation that helps, even if you're having a stressful situation at work, it's chaotic environment, taking 2 minutes to come back to yourself will do much better than you pushing through. Okay, visualization, just going to do through meditation and then movement as well. Light stretching, anything. Making a practice of this every day allows you to feel into your body, but just also allows you to process emotions. So when you do go into stressful situations or if they happen, you can deal with them better. Okay. But I also really want to emphasize that survival is strength and it's nothing to be ashamed of. If you've ever had a moment where you have had a breakdown, if you have been violated by someone, speak up. There's a big problem where probably until the 90s, if something happened to you, if you got sexually abused or harassed, it's something to be ashamed of and it's something to insult in another person. That's not the reality anymore. And we need to remember that. And we can consciously know that, but we need to teach our body, we need to teach our subconscious mind that as well. So ask for support, get help, be open about your story because the more we do, the more awareness we bring and the more women in the future we protect. Right now, there are so many standards, like we were talking about before, that are normal. Holding keys within our fingers, having to smile and laugh it off when we get harassed. But these are things that we should start to say no to. Not the keys thing, keep that. But talk about. The more we talk about it, the more we hold spaces like this, the more support we can gain from women. Okay, so we're going to leave it off there in a moment, but I welcome any other questions. So, go away with any questions, launch them. Oop, let us know because I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you. And if you have any advice or any other things that you feel you would like more support in, more help in, that we can do, just let us know. We're here to help. Okay. Alrighty. Well, I guess I'll leave it there, but I want to remind everyone that we're just starting this now. So far, what we're trying to do is just create a more safe place for women. Okay, I have a question, so I'll answer this. Okay, I live in a dangerous city and I feel alone. How can I help myself feel better? Okay, so if you live in a dangerous city, the important thing is finding support groups or finding help. Doesn't matter what city you live in, if it's a first world or third world country, you will have support groups and you'll have support areas. There are many different helplines that you can contribute to, but the biggest thing is if you feel alone, I do question what are you doing to make yourself alone? It's really, really, really important to push past that inner solidarity and get help and get support because there's many community groups, there's many support groups. Even if you go on Facebook or online, the virtual world has so much support. And that's also something that we're trying to create here. So we want to grow this YouTube channel. We want to grow our social media so we can get more support for people, but also answer more questions that people are struggling with. And soon we're going to be launching different services that can help women feel more supported more in the future. Okay, so if you want to learn more about that, or if you want to stay here, get more support, join a community where we can empower women, you can empower each other, make friends, please subscribe. We also have a little Telegram link that will be below somewhere. And yeah, feel free to reach out whenever you need help. So I think I'll leave it there for now. But thank you for coming to the first one. I was a little nervous coming on here, but I'm glad to be here to be able to be in a community and just help support, help give knowledge and value. And yeah, so I will leave it there. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Thank you for being a part of this community. And if you want this community to grow, please subscribe or feel free to reach out to us on Telegram below. All right. Thank you so much. I'll leave it there then. Okay. If I know how to close it. There we go. Bye.